Listen to me. Look at me for a moment. You didn't survive everything you survived just to stumble into January on autopilot. You didn't make it through the pressure, the pain, the losses, the lessons, just to let a calendar page intimidate you. If you were breathing right now, if your heart is still beating right now, that means God didn't bring you this far to leave you like this. January 2026 is not here to remind you of what you failed to do. It's here to announce what you're finally ready to become. This is not just a new year. This is a divine interruption. Some of you walked into this year tired, but not defeated, wounded, but still standing, delayed, but not denied. And I came to tell somebody today, before you move forward, before you chase another goal, before you try to build something new, you must reset what broke you, restart what fear stopped, and refocus what distractions stole. Because the next level of your life does not respond to wishful thinking. It responds to intentional movement. January 2026 is calling you higher. The question is, will you answer? Before you reset your goals, before you rewrite your plans, before you announce to everybody what you're about to do this year, hear me clearly, you must reset your mind. Because if the mind stays trapped, the life will never move forward. You can change your calendar. You can change your location. You can even change the people around you. But if you don't change the way you think, you will reproduce the same results in a different year. Some of you walked into January 2026 with the same mindset you carried in January 2025, and you're wondering why nothing feels new. It's because new seasons don't respond to old thinking. Your mind is the control center of your destiny. Every decision you make, every action you take, every habit you repeat begins as a thought. Long before you ever failed publicly, you quit privately in your thinking. Long before you succeeded visibly, you believed invisibly. That's why resetting your mind is not optional, it's foundational. If you don't upgrade your thinking, you'll sabotage your own breakthrough while calling it bad luck, opposition, or delay. But the truth is, some of the greatest battles you've been fighting were never around you, they were within you. Some of you are still thinking from survival instead of purpose. You're thinking small because you had to stay small just to make it through. You learned how to manage pain, but you never learned how to imagine freedom. You learned how to cope, but you never learned how to create. And now God is saying, I'm trying to take you into overflow, but your mind is still living in lack. You can't build a future while rehearsing past trauma every day. At some point, you have to stop letting yesterday define tomorrow. Resetting your mind means confronting the lies you've been living with for years. The lie that says, this is just how I am. The lie that says, people like me don't win. The lie that says, I missed my chance. Listen to me. If you're still breathing, you're still becoming. Time did not expire on your purpose just because you made a mistake. Failure is an event, not an identity. But if you don't reset your thinking, you'll wear temporary setbacks like permanent labels. Some of you are trying to set goals while still doubting your worth. You're writing vision boards with insecurity in your spirit. You're declaring big dreams, but whispering them because you're afraid they won't come true. And I came to tell you today, confidence is not arrogance, it's alignment. When you reset your mind, you stop asking, am I enough? And you start declaring, I've been equipped. You may not know everything, but you know enough to take the next step. And the next step is all heaven ever requires. Resetting your mind also means changing the conversations you have with yourself. You talk to yourself more than anyone else. And for some of you, that voice has been your biggest enemy. You encourage everybody else, but criticize yourself. You extend grace to everyone else, but punish yourself for old failures that God already forgave. That internal dialogue has power. What you repeatedly say internally eventually becomes what you live out externally. If you want a different life, you need a different inner voice. Some of you keep setting goals that look good on paper, but don't match who you're becoming. That's because you're chasing outcomes without transforming identity. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your mindset. A reset means you stop saying, I'm trying, and you start saying, I'm training. Trying is emotional. Training is intentional. Trying quits when it gets uncomfortable. Training expects resistance and grows anyway. Let me say this clearly. Resetting your mind is uncomfortable because it requires honesty. You have to admit where you've been thinking wrong. You have to admit where fear has been disguised as wisdom. You have to admit where procrastination has been called patience. But growth always begins with truth. And the truth is, some of you are not stuck because of what happened to you. You're stuck because of the story you keep telling yourself about what happened to you. When you reset your mind, you stop asking for permission to evolve. You stop waiting for validation to change. You stop needing applause to obey. You understand that progress is not loud at first. Sometimes it's quiet discipline. Sometimes it's unseen decisions. Sometimes it's saying no to habits that used to feel normal. But every time you choose growth over comfort, you are rewiring your future. January 2026 doesn't need another version of you that's busy but unfocused, inspired but undisciplined, hopeful but uncommitted. This season demands clarity, and clarity begins in the mind. Before you chase a new title, a new relationship, a new opportunity, or a new level, reset how you see yourself. Because when the mind shifts, behavior follows. When belief changes, consistency becomes possible. And when the mind is renewed, the life has no choice but to transform. So today, make the decision that this will be the year you stop negotiating with limitation. This will be the year you stop shrinking to stay comfortable. This will be the year you stop letting old thoughts dictate new outcomes. Reset your mind and everything else will begin to align. Hear me clearly. Some things cannot go with you where God is taking you. You can't drag yesterday into tomorrow and expect momentum. You can't carry last year's weight into this year's race and still call it progress. There are burdens you survived with that you are not meant to succeed with. They kept you alive in one season, but they will slow you down in the next. And January 2026 is not asking you what you endured, it's asking you what you're willing to release. Some of you are exhausted, not because the journey is too long, but because you're carrying things you were never designed to hold forever. You're carrying guilt that should have been laid down. You're carrying resentment that should have been forgiven. You're carrying relationships that drained you but felt familiar. And familiarity has a way of convincing us to hold on to what's heavy just because we know how to manage the pain. But managing pain is not the same as healing, and surviving is not the same as advancing. There are habits you need to release, not because they are dramatic, but because they are subtle. Small compromises, delayed obedience, comfort disguised as rest. You keep telling yourself it's not that bad, but if it's costing you focus, peace, or discipline, it's heavier than you think. The enemy doesn't always attack you with destruction. Sometimes he distracts you with weight, and you can't run fast while carrying slow habits. Some of you are carrying expectations that were never yours. You're trying to live up to someone else's definition of success, someone else's timeline, someone else's approval. That pressure is crushing your joy. You're running a race you were never called to run, and you're tired because you're off course. Let me free you, Toda. Why? You don't need to explain why you're letting go of something that's costing you your peace. Growth will always offend the version of you that wanted to stay comfortable. There are people you have to release, not because you hate them, not because they're evil, but because they are no longer aligned. Every relationship is not meant for every season. Some people are assigned to your preparation, not your promotion. Some people only know the old version of you, and they keep expecting you to stay there so they can remain comfortable. But if you keep trying to carry everyone with you, you'll end up delayed, frustrated, and spiritually depleted. You keep praying for strength, but what you really need is subtraction. Strength isn't always about adding more. It's about letting go of what weakens you. God never asked you to be everything to everyone. He asked you to be faithful to what he assigned you. And sometimes faithfulness looks like walking away from what once felt necessary, but is now optional. Let me say this plainly. Some of you are still bleeding from wounds that happened years ago, and you've normalized the pain. You've learned how to smile through it, function through it, even succeed through it, but you never healed from it. That unhealed pain is weight. It shows up in your reactions. It shows up in your trust issues. It shows up in your fear of starting again. And until you release it, it will keep influencing decisions you don't even realize you're making. You can keep rehearsing old disappointments and expect new confidence. You can't keep feeding anger and expect peace. You can't keep carrying regret and expect boldness. At some point, you have to decide that the cost of holding on is greater than the fear of letting go. Release doesn't mean it didn't matter. Release means it no longer controls you. Some of you need to let go of the version of yourself that no longer fits your future. The old coping mechanisms, the old excuses, the old identity built around what you went through instead of who you're becoming. That version of you helped you survive, but it cannot lead you forward. You're not dishonoring your past by evolving. You're honoring it by refusing to stay stuck there. This year requires mobility. It requires agility. It requires clarity. And clarity comes when your hands are free. You can't receive what's next if your hands are full of what's over. January 2026 is not asking you to run faster. It's asking you to run lighter. Let go of the weight. Lay it down. Walk away if you must. Cry if you need to. But don't carry it another season. Because when you release what's heavy, you make room for what's holy. When you let go of what drains you, you create space for what restores you. And when you stop dragging last year into this year, you finally give yourself permission to move forward, unburdened, focused, and ready for the race ahead. Let me speak to the part of you that feels embarrassed to begin again. The part of you that whispers, I should be further by now. The part of you that looks at the clock, the calendar, the years behind you, and wonders if restarting is an admission of failure. Hear me clearly. Starting again does not mean you lost. It means you learned. It means you survived long enough to try again with wisdom instead of innocence. And January 2026 is not mocking you for where you stopped. It's honoring you for having the courage to move again. Some of you stopped, not because you lacked ability, but because life hit harder than you expected. You didn't quit because you were lazy. You quit because you were wounded. You didn't walk away because you were incapable. You walked away because you were overwhelmed. And instead of giving yourself grace, you've been punishing yourself for pausing. But a pause is not a period. A setback is not a sentence. Sometimes stopping is the very thing that keeps you alive long enough to restart with strength. Restarting is uncomfortable because it forces you to confront pride. Pride says, I don't want anyone to see me begin again. Pride says, what will they think if I try and fail again? But humility says, I'd rather look foolish starting over than remain stuck pretending I'm fine. And let me tell you something powerful. Heaven always responds to humility. When you restart with honesty, you unlock help you couldn't access while pretending. There is a version of you that tried before with fear, with immaturity, with limited understanding. Oh, there is a version of you standing here now with experience, discernment, and scars that taught you what books never could. You are not restarting from scratch. You are restarting from wisdom. The problem is some of you keep comparing this season to the first attempt, not realizing how much you've grown since then. You're stronger now. You're clearer now. You're more aware of your weaknesses and your boundaries. That's not loss. That's leverage. Some of you are afraid to restart because you think it confirms the voices that doubted you. But those voices were never the authority over your life. The only thing worse than failing once is letting that failure decide your future. Fear will try to convince you that it's safer to stay where you are than to risk disappointment again. But safety without progress becomes a prison. Comfort without growth becomes stagnation, and stagnation slowly erodes your confidence until you forget who you were created to be. Restarting requires faith, not the loud kind, but the quiet kind that shows up daily. The kind that gets up after disappointment and says, I'll try again. The kind that takes one step even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. the kind that doesn't need applause to move forward. Some of the bravest decisions you will ever make will be made in silence when nobody is cheering and nobody is watching. But your future is shifting with every obedient step. Some of you need to restart dreams you buried because they hurt too much to. Remember, you called it maturity, but it was really fear. You said, I'm over it, but deep down you still wonder, what if? Let me remind you, unfulfilled purpose doesn't disappear, it just waits. And if you don't answer the call to restart, that quiet regret will keep knocking year after year until you either respond or resign yourself to regret. Restarting doesn't mean you repeat the same mistakes. It means you restart with boundaries. You restart with structure. You restart with discernment. You move slower if you need to, but you move smarter. You don't rush to prove anything. You don't chase validation. You don't ignore red flags anymore. You've learned the cost of ignoring wisdom, and this time you choose differently. Some of you are waiting for confidence before you restart, but confidence comes after obedience, not before it. You don't feel ready. You become ready by moving. You don't feel strong. You become strong by lifting the weight again. Every restart rebuilds trust with yourself. Every step you take restores a little more belief. And over time, what once felt fragile becomes firm again. Let me speak life into you. You are not behind. You are being rebuilt. You are not disqualified. You are being refined. You are not late. You are being prepared. This restart is not a detour. It's alignment. What didn't work before didn't fail. It taught you. And what you're about to begin now will carry the weight of everything you've learned. So don't rush it, but don't avoid it either. Don't wait for perfect conditions. They rarely come. Don't wait for everyone to understand. They won't. Just start. Again. Start small if you must. Start quietly if you need to. But start, because restarting is not weakness. It's courage wrapped in obedience. And this time you're not starting empty-handed. You're starting equipped, focused, and ready for what's next. Let me tell you something you may not want to hear, but you need to hear it if this year is going to be different. Motivation will inspire you, but discipline will transform you. Motivation gets you excited at the beginning. Discipline keeps you moving when the excitement wears off. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is intentional. And if you keep waiting to feel like it before you act, you will keep cycling through the same starts with no sustainable finish. Some of you are highly motivated, but poorly structured. You feel deeply, you dream big, you get inspired easily. But when resistance shows up, consistency disappears. That's because motivation responds to feeling, and feelings are unstable. You don't always feel confident. You don't always feel strong. You don't always feel ready. But discipline doesn't ask how you feel. It asks what you decided. Discipline is the bridge between intention and result. Without it, your potential remains untapped. You don't rise to the level of your motivation, you fall to the level of your habits. And habits are built through discipline. That's why you can be inspired by a speech, a book, or a moment, but still return to old patterns by Tuesday. Inspiration ignites the fire, but discipline, keeps it burning. If you want a different outcome this year, you need to stop depending on emotional energy and start developing daily structure. Discipline will ask you to show up when nobody is clapping, when progress is slow, when results are invisible, when quitting would be easier than continuing. Discipline trains you to obey the vision even when the feeling is gone. And that's where most people lose momentum, not because the goal is too hard, but because the routine feels boring. But let me tell you this, boring consistency beats emotional intensity every time. Some of you are praying for breakthrough, but avoiding the routine that produces it. You want the reward without the rhythm. You want the harvest without the habit. You want growth without grind. But discipline is proof that you believe what you say you want. Anyone can want change. Discipline is what proves you're committed to it. When you build discipline, you stop negotiating with your goals based on convenience. Discipline also protects you from burnout. When you rely on motivation, you overdo it on good days and disappear on bad ones. Discipline creates balance. It teaches you how to pace yourself. It helps you build momentum without exhausting yourself. You stop swinging between extremes and start moving steadily forward. That steady movement may feel slow, but it compounds over time into undeniable progress. Let's be honest, discipline is uncomfortable because it exposes excuses. It reveals where you've been inconsistent. It challenges a version of you that wants comfort more than growth. Discipline says go to bed on time. Discipline says do the work even when you don't feel like it. Discipline says say no to distractions so you can say yes to destiny. And the flesh resists that kind of structure. But resistance is often a sign that discipline is doing its job. Some of you have mistaken freedom for a lack of structure. But true freedom comes from discipline. Discipline gives you control over your time, your energy, your focus. Without it, everything controls you. Your phone, your mood, other people's demands. Discipline puts you back in the driver's seat of your own life. You stop reacting and start responding with intention. Discipline will take you where motivation cannot, through the middle. Motivation loves beginnings. It shows up at the start of the year, the start of the project, the start of the journey. Discipline carries you through the middle, where it's repetitive, where progress feels slow, where nobody is cheering anymore. And if you can master the middle, the finish becomes inevitable. Let me tell you something powerful. Discipline is a form of self-respect. Every time you keep a commitment to yourself, you rebuild trust with yourself. Every time you follow through, you strengthen your confidence. Over time, discipline changes how you see yourself. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who finishes. That identity shift is life-changing. This year is not asking you to be perfect. It's asking you to be consistent. It's asking you to build systems instead of chasing feelings. It's asking you to decide in advance who you're going to be on the days you don't feel strong. Because those days are coming. And when they do, motivation won't save you, but discipline will. So don't wait until you feel ready. Don't wait until you feel inspired. Decide what time you wake up. Decide what habits you keep. Decide what distractions you eliminate. Decide what you do daily, not occasionally, because when discipline becomes your lifestyle, results stop being accidental. They become inevitable. Let me say this clearly, because this is where many people lose their future while convincing themselves they're doing fine. Not everything that feels good is meant to stay. Not everything that looks right is aligned. And not everything that opens a door is an invitation from God. Refocus requires discernment, and discernment often demands that you say no, even to things that are not bad, but simply not best. Some of you are exhausted because you are overcommitted, not underqualified. You said yes too quickly, yes too often, yes out of guilt. Yes, out of fear of missing out. Yes, because you didn't want to disappoint people. And now your energy is divided, your focus is scattered, and your purpose feels blurred. Good things have a way of crowding out great things when you don't guard your focus. And the enemy doesn't always need to destroy you. Sometimes all he needs to do is keep you busy. Refocus is painful because it forces you to confront attachment. There are things you enjoy, things you're good at, things people praise you for, but they're pulling you away from what you were actually called to do. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Just because people applaud it doesn't mean it's aligned. And just because it produces results doesn't mean it produces fulfillment. Alignment always matters more than applause. Some of you have been confusing movement with progress. Your schedule is full, but your spirit is empty. Your calendar is packed, but your vision is neglected. You're doing a lot, but growing very little. That's what happens when you say yes to everything instead of committing to the few things that actually matter. Focus isn't about doing more. It's about doing what matters most with clarity and intention. Saying no is hard because it feels like loss. It feels like you're closing doors. It feels like you're missing opportunities. But focus always requires sacrifice. Every yes costs you something. Every commitment consumes time, energy, and attention. If you don't choose where those resources go, life will choose for you. And life is not strategic. Life is reactive. Purpose is intentional. Some of you are holding on to good habits that are no longer producing growth. They worked in one season, but they're limiting you in this one. You're loyal to routines that no longer stretch you. You're comfortable with patterns that no longer challenge you. Growth requires change, and change requires letting go, even when what you're letting go of once helped you survive. Refocus also means letting go of distractions that feel harmless. Endless scrolling, constant noise, being available to everyone at all times. Those things seem small, but they slowly erode your attention span, your creativity, and your discipline. What you repeatedly give your attention to will shape who you become. If you want a focused life, you have to guard your focus like it's valuable, because it is. Some of you are afraid to say no because you're afraid of being misunderstood. You want to explain yourself. You want people to approve. But clarity doesn't require permission, and growth doesn't require consensus. People who benefit from your lack of boundaries will always resist your clarity. But that resistance is often confirmation that the boundary is necessary. Refocus is an act of obedience. It's choosing purpose over popularity. It's choosing depth over noise. It's choosing impact over image. It's understanding that your calling deserves your best energy, not your leftovers. You cannot give your best to what matters most if you keep giving your best away to what matters least. Some of you need to refocus your relationships. Not everyone deserves the same level of access to your thoughts, your time, your dreams. There are people who drain why you every time you leave the conversation. There are people who constantly pull you back into old mindsets. That doesn't make them bad people, but it does mean you need better boundaries. Proximity is powerful. Who you allow close to you influences how clearly you see your future. Refocus also means simplifying. Complexity creates confusion. Confusion kills momentum. When you simplify your goals, your schedule, and your priorities, execution becomes easier. You stop feeling overwhelmed and start feeling aligned. Focus brings peace because it eliminates unnecessary decisions. You already know what matters. Now you have to commit to it. Let me say this plainly. You cannot become who you're called to be while trying to keep everyone comfortable. You cannot reach your highest potential while refusing to disappoint anyone. Growth always requires courage. Courage to say no. Courage to walk away. Courage to prioritize what matters even when it costs you something. This year is not asking you to do everything. It's asking you to do the right things well. It's asking you to stop confusing access with assignment. It's asking you to stop giving sacred energy to casual distractions. Because when you refocus, your power returns. Your clarity sharpens. Your discipline strengthens. Say no to the good so you can say yes to the great. Say no to distractions so you can say yes to direction. Say no to noise so you can hear purpose clearly again. Because focus is not about limitation. It's about alignment. And when your life is aligned, momentum follows. Let me tell you something that will change how you see your life. If you're willing to hear it, your environment is not neutral. It is either feeding you or draining you, strengthening you or slowly weakening you, sharpening your vision or blurring it little by little. And the reason some of you feel tired all the time is not because you lack ability. It's because you are surrounded by influences that are quietly pulling life out of you. You can have a strong calling and still struggle if your environment is wrong. You can have discipline and still feel discouraged if your surroundings are toxic. You can be gifted and still feel stuck if what you're exposed to every day contradicts what you're trying to become. Environment shapes behavior, and behavior shapes destiny. That's why changing your environment is not betrayal, it's survival. Some of you are trying to grow in places that celebrate who you used to be, but resist who you're becoming. You feel tension when you start talking about growth. You feel awkward when you set boundaries. You feel pressure to shrink so others don't feel uncomfortable. And that pressure is costing you momentum. Growth requires space. Vision requires oxygen. You cannot keep expanding in places that refuse to stretch with you. Let's be honest, some environments drain you emotionally. Every conversation turns negative. Every situation becomes drama. Every interaction leaves you heavier than W. And you arrived. You walk in hopeful and walk out exhausted. That's not random. That's environmental fatigue. And if you stay there long enough, you'll start thinking exhaustion is normal. It's not. It's a sign that something around you is misaligned. Other environments drain you mentally. Constant noise, endless opinions, too much information with no direction. You're consuming everything but processing nothing. Your mind never gets quiet enough to hear clarity. You wonder why focus is hard, why discipline feels heavy, why creativity feels blocked. It's because your mind is overstimulated and undernourished. What you feed your mind daily determines what grows there. Some environments drain you spiritually. You stop praying like you used to. You stop believing like you used to. You stop expecting growth, not because you lost faith, but because the atmosphere doesn't support it. You're surrounded by doubt, sarcasm, and complacency, and over time, it starts to feel normal. But just because something is common doesn't mean it's healthy. Let me say this carefully. Not everyone who drains you is doing it intentionally. Some people are simply unaware. Some environments were good for a previous version of you. They helped you heal, survive, or learn. But seasons change, and what once fed you may now be starving you. Staying loyal to an environment that no longer serves your growth is a form of self-neglect. Your environment includes people, but it also includes routines, media, habits, and spaces. The room you spend time in, the voices you listen to, the content you consume, the conversations you tolerate, all of it is shaping you. And if you don't choose your environment deliberately, it will shape you accidentally. Some of you are praying for change while refusing to change what surrounds you. You want new thinking, but keep listening to old voices. You want peace, but stay connected to chaos. You want discipline, but remain in environments that reward comfort and excuses. Change cannot survive long in an unchanged environment. Eventually, the environment will overpower the intention. Let me free you from guilt today. Protecting your environment is not selfish. It's responsible. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot lead from a depleted place. You cannot give your best while constantly recovering from emotional drain. Boundaries are not walls, they are filters. They decide what gets access to you and what doesn't. Some of you need to stop explaining your need for space. You don't need permission to grow. You don't need approval to protect your peace. The people who truly care about you may not fully understand at first, but they will respect the change. And the ones who don't respect it are revealing how much access they were taking without regard for your well-being. Your environment should challenge you, not crush you. It should stretch you, not suffocate you. It should support your growth, not sabotage it. You should be around voices that speak life, not just truth without compassion. Around people who hold you accountable without tearing you down. Around spaces that encourage discipline, not distraction. This year demands intentional environments. Spaces where your focus is protected, relationships where growth is celebrated, routines that reinforce who you're becoming. Because when your environment is right, growth becomes natural, discipline becomes easier, clarity becomes sharper. You stop fighting yourself because what surrounds you is finally supporting you. So take inventory, pay attention to how you feel after interactions. Notice what drains you and what restores you. Be honest about what no longer fits. And have the courage to change what needs to change. Because when your environment starts feeding you instead of draining you, you don't just survive, you begin to thrive. Let me speak to the part of you that feels frustrated because the progress isn't showing fast enough. The part of you that expected more by now, that thought you'd be further along, that quietly wonders if what you're doing is even working. Hear me clearly. Delayed progress is still progress. Just because you don't see immediate results doesn't mean nothing is happening. Some of the most important growth happens underground, out of sight, before anything ever breaks the surface. We live in a culture that celebrates speed and visibility, overnight success, instant results, viral moments. And when your journey doesn't look like that, it's easy to feel like you're failing, but growth was never meant to be rushed. Anything built too quickly is often too weak to last. The reason your progress feels slow may be because it's being built with depth, not hype. Some of you are comparing your behind-the-scenes work to someone else's highlight reel. You're measuring your process against their platform, your preparation against their performance, and that comparison is robbing you of joy. You don't know how long they struggled before you noticed them. You don't know how many quiet days they endured to get to that moment. Your pace is not a problem, it's protection. Delayed progress tests your patience, but it also builds your character. It forces you to decide whether you're committed to the outcome or addicted to the applause. It reveals whether you truly believe in what you're doing or if you were only excited about how it would look to others. When progress is slow, your motives are purified. You learn to show up without recognition, to work without validation, to remain faithful without feedback. Some of you are discouraged because the work feels repetitive, the same routine, the same effort, the same small steps. But repetition is how mastery is built. You don't become strong by lifting a weight once. You become strong by lifting it consistently over time. The days that feel insignificant are often the days that are shaping you the most. Delayed progress also protects you from pride. If everything came quick, you might skip the lessons that keep you grounded. You might receive the platform without the preparation, the opportunity without the maturity, the blessing without the boundaries to sustain it. Delay is not denial. It's development. It's God making sure you can carry what you're praying for without it destroying you. Some of you are tempted to quit because the results don't match the effort yet. You're doing the right things, but the breakthrough hasn't come. Let me remind you, effort compounds. What feels small today adds up tomorrow. Seeds don't sprout the day they're planted, but they're still growing. And if you dig them up every day to check progress, you'll interrupt the very process you're hoping for. Delayed progress requires trust. Trust in the process. Trust in the timing. Trust in yourself. You have to believe that showing up matters even when it feels invisible. You have to believe that discipline is doing something even when motivation is low. You have to believe that consistency is shaping a future you can't see yet. Some of you are closer than you think. You're standing at the edge, a breakthrough, but fatigue is trying to convince you to stop. Discouragement is whispering that it's not worth it. But what if the reason it feels hard is because it's working? What if the resistance you're feeling is evidence that you're pushing past old limits? Growth often feels like struggle before it feels like strength. Let me say this, progress is not always loud. Yes. Times it's subtle. It's how you react differently, how you recover faster, how you make better decisions, how you don't quit like you used to. Those are signs of growth. Don't dismiss them just because they don't come with applause. Internal progress always precedes external change. Delayed progress also teaches endurance, and endurance is what carries you through seasons where passion fades. Anyone can start strong. Not everyone can stay consistent. Endurance is what separates people who wish from people who finish, and every day you choose to keep going, even slowly, you are strengthening that endurance. This year is not asking you to rush. It's asking you to remain, to stay committed, to trust the work you're putting in, to stop quitting just because the timeline doesn't match your expectation. The harvest is connected to faithfulness, not speed, and what you're building slowly now will stand when quick results would have collapsed. So don't curse the pace, honor the process, keep showing up, keep planning, keep believing. Delayed progress is not wasted time, it's invested time. And one day when the results finally appear, you'll realize that nothing was lost. Everything was preparing you for that moment. Let me remind you of something you may have forgotten in the middle of surviving. You owe the world the best version of you, not the broken version that learned how to cope, not the bitter version that learned how to protect itself, not the smaller version that leered how to stay quiet so nobody would expect too much. The world does not need your exhaustion. It needs your excellence. And you dishonor your future every time you settle for less than who you were created to be. Some of you have been showing up as a reduced version of yourself because life demanded it for a season. You had to shrink to survive. You had to lower expectations. You had to manage pain, loss, disappointment, and pressure. But hear me clearly, that season is over. Survival was necessary then, but it cannot be your permanent identity. You were not created just to get through life. You were created to contribute something meaningful to it. You owe the world that healed you, the disciplined you, the focused you, the version of you that did the inner work instead of bleeding on everyone else. Some of you have normalized dysfunction and called it personality. You've normalized inconsistency and called it just how I am. But growth demands responsibility. Healing demands ownership. At some point, you have to stop excusing what you refuse to change. Let me say this with love. Your potential is not private. It was never meant to be hidden. Someone is waiting on what you carry. Someone needs your voice, your vision, your leadership, your example. And every time you choose comfort over growth, delay over discipline, fear over faith, you are withholding something the world desperately needs. That's not humility. That's fear disguised as modesty. Some of you are afraid of becoming your best self, because it will require you to let go of familiar identities. The struggling one, the underdog, the one people feel sorry for. Those identities gave you sympathy, but they are now costing you purpose. You can't keep rehearsing who you used to be when God is calling you to step into who you're becoming. Becoming your best self requires courage. Courage to change habits that feel normal. Courage to walk away from patterns that feel safe. Courage to disappoint people who benefited from your limitations. Growth will cost you comfort. Excellence will cost you excuses. Healing will cost you honesty. But the cost of staying the same is far greater than the discomfort of becoming better. You owe the world the version of you that follows through, the version of you that keeps commitments, the version of you that doesn't quit when it gets hard. Consistency is not just a personal win, it's a public testimony. When people see you show up with discipline, it gives them permission to believe change is possible for them too. Your life is louder than your words. Some of you have been waiting for permission to evolve, waiting for validation, waiting for someone to tell you it's okay to want more. Let me tell you now, you don't need permission to grow. You don't need approval to heal. You don't need applause to become better. The call on your life is reason enough. Becoming your best self also means embracing responsibility. Responsibility. Thank you for your mindset. Responsibility for your choices, responsibility for your reactions. You cannot control everything that happens to you, but you are fully responsible for who you become because of it. Blame keeps you stuck. Ownership moves you forward. Let me challenge you. Stop asking, what do I deserve? And start asking, what do I owe? You owe effort. You owe integrity. You owe discipline. You owe the world the version of you that didn't give up halfway through the process, the version of you that didn't let pain turn into poison, the version of you that chose growth even when no one was watching. This is not about perfection. It's about intention. It's about waking up every day committed to being a little better than yesterday, reading when you'd rather scroll, resting when you'd rather escape, training when you'd rather complain, choosing purpose when you'd rather be comfortable. The best version of you is not arrogant. It's aligned. It's not loud. It's consistent. It's not flawless. It's disciplined. And it's not unreachable. It's built daily through choices that feel small but matter deeply. So don't cheat the world by shrinking. Don't rob your future by settling. Don't betray your calling by staying comfortable. Rise, heal, grow, show up fully, because the world doesn't need another distracted, discouraged, half-committed version of you. It needs the best one. And that version is already within reach if you're willing to become it. In you, not the bitter you, the healed, disciplined, focused you. 9. Consistency is the language of breakthrough. Small daily actions compound into undeniable results. 10. January is the door, but you must walk through it. Opportunity knocks, but obedience opens. This year moves when you move.